What we think is really cool about this season of Designated Survivor, we have a political situation in the United States that you just couldn't make up.
It's exciting to, I think, be part of a show that isn't scared about tackling stuff that's really happening in the world.
The system is broken, and you people broke it.
It's a very complicated thing to govern 340 million people. Damn it, this is not a game.
Of course it is!
Season 3 tackles every political issue of our time.
Voter suppression, HIV-positive characters,
Campaign smearing and fake news.
Whatever happened to standards? This isn't journalism!
It is amazing with the issues that when we started shooting coming true.
we integrate real people, documentary footage made by documentary filmmakers into our show.
We have one planet.
Our president is not embracing all of us as American citizens.
Think about your daughter.
Can you be a politician and swim in the sea and not get dirty at all? That's the challenge for Kirkman this year.
You're every bit as much a politician as I am.
God help me if that's true. Politics do not need to be this dirty, and you have the power to prove it.
Hey.
I've got a surprise for you.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. I'm just wondering where it's at. You got to bear with me. I can't spill the beans just yet because it will be all the better if it's a surprise. It's a very special guest. Why, hello.
Hello, Happy New Year.
Oh, I don't think it's gone through yet. Tom.
Yo.
Oh, there he is.
Right, how you doing? You all good?
Yay! Yeah.
Yeah, great.
me and Yair have just been. We're about to talk about the TV series Designated Survivor. It's just total.
That's with Keith Sutherland, isn't it? Where he has to become president when.
Yeah.
Oh, it's incredible.
Utterly irredeemable, worthless, imperialist trash.
I need a written apology from you, Jack, for making me watch this whole thing.
Yeah, I think this is the first time I've ever made you watch like 50 episodes of something. Usually it's just like a 2-hour film.
It was a grueling death march through liberalism.
Is it worth watching for just the banter, I guess?
Yeah,
if you want to put it like that.
There are some really jokes bits, yeah.
Yeah, I had it like on in the background quite a lot and stuff. Although I did find it pretty absorbing at times. Like, I was expecting it to be just mediocre. But it's really fucking shit, and it's just so. I'm gonna put the pilot episode on silently on the TV, the classic method.
Is it like kind of 24 style West Wing? Is it more West Wing or more 24 style?
It's like if they had a baby.
It's a totally cynical, craven attempt to combine elements of the West Wing, 24, police procedurals, and family drama. Essentially.
It's got something for everyone.
That's like the concept of the show. It says on Wikipedia that like that was how they were. It was like written by its creator as like a spec script for some producer, and fucking, you know, it's just totally like a hack job of just like, let's put all these elements together that on their own are individually popular, and see if when we throw all this shit at the wall that it sticks.
Yeah. So is it the Russians that did it?
They do a lot of stuff.
I do suspect that the show is a covert black op by Russia. Yes, I've long thought their latest technique to destabilize American democracy by making liberals look like a bunch of stupid cunts.
but in the storyline of Designated Survivor, is it suggested to be the Russians who are orchestrating the terror?
There are some individual subplots where the Russians are definitely sneaking around doing evil things.
Yeah, Russia
but
definitely...
It's not really Russia behind the bombing at the beginning.
No, Russia definitely get up to some nefarious stuff, though, throughout the show. What is this in my hair?
Sorry. Designated Survivor. I won't interrupt you guys too much. I'm guessing you're recording. You're going to record you watching it.
No. We've both watched all like 50-something episodes of it.
Yeah.
Independently.
Just going to talk about it. That's cool.
So we're just going to be getting into the meat, or in the parlance of one of the early cinematic works of one of the show's stars, the cock meat sandwich of it all. That's what we're going to be getting into.
All right, cock meat sandwich time. You know the drill.
You boys ready for your cock meat sandwich?
No?
Well, you better get hungry real fast, because I got a whole lot of sandwich waiting for you.
Holy shit!
Well, I'll probably chime up every now and then.
Yeah,
man. I try not to derail the conversation.
It's good just to have you here as well, because then
you can be the audience surrogate.
Yeah, you can like laugh at our jokes and then
ask questions that you think they might have about this incredible subject.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's just very good to have you here, Tom. And we are both just pleased.
I'll probably have some questions about the show anyway. So
questions
just in general.
Questions.
So hopefully those questions can drive discussion into areas that you haven't previously thought of. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, let's see. So we've already done a little bit of preamble and talked about elements of the show. I hope I recorded all of it. See, I'm just looking at my tabs just to get up anything relevant I might need, and I've just got Tom's face there in the little window just poking out, guiding me along the way. What do I need?
It's not the worst thing to look at, is it?
No, not at all. I need designated survivor Wikipedia, that's probably what I'd need. And then all my notes are just like messages I sent Yair and FFF.
Or maybe, you never know, there could be you know how you get those separate Wikipedias set up for like certain, if it's a show that has like a big, like there's probably one for like The Sopranos or something like that.
Oh yeah.
There's Twin Peaks Wikipedia. Maybe there's such a huge fan base for Designated Survivor that someone set up their very own detailed Designated Survivor Wikipedia website.
Yeah, there actually is apparently.
Oh my
I just
god.
looked it up, and they've got all like fucking whole pages for all the characters. Like I've just gone on FBI agent Hannah Wells at the moment, played by Maggie Q. By the way, I'm so bad at remembering character names. I can sometimes remember actor names, although I don't really know anyone in this show. Cal Penn, I guess I know from the Harold and Kumar movies and his minor role in the Obama administration. But like, I mean, Maggie Q is a pretty memorable name. And Hannah Wells, I kind of remember.
Yeah, I've only seen Mission Impossible 3 and Live Free or Die Hard, the fourth Die Hard film. I don't think I've seen anything else with Maggie Q in.
Yeah, I don't really know her stuff much, but she's like originally a stunt woman, isn't she? She came up in Hong Kong cinema, am I right?
Yes.
That's good, because I got really confused and I was like, have I like done racial stereotyping? And then I realised that I was reading the bio of her character, and who has roots largely just in the United States.
Speaking of Hong Kong action cinema.
At this point, Tom holds up a copy of John Woo's film Hard Boiled.
I did watch that the other day.
Oh,
it's good.
Nice.
It's
one.
good.
Excellent.
It's probably before John Woo came over and was tainted by the excesses of Hollywood.
What, like Face Off and shit? Was that him or was it Con Air?
Well, Face Off was actually, I do have time for
Face Off's cool. I like Face Off.
Yeah.
Not too big of a fan of Broken Arrow. He also did
good
one of the Mission
Neil
Impossible
Young
films,
album,
didn't he?
though, I think, Broken Arrow.
Of course.
Good Ranch, where Neil lived for many years. So, Designated Survivor. This is what we're going to be talking about today. We've got the original RP lineup here for you. Tom just kind of turned up, and we were happy to bring him into our conversation, and he seems happy to listen to us talk about a show that he hasn't seen at all, and obviously to interject when he feels it necessary, or well, not even necessary, you know, whenever you so please, Tom.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I'm just laying out the rules here. You know? I believe in
the rules of the debate.
A strict rules-based international order.
Yeah, I haven't seen Designated Survivor. and I don't intend to. So everything I'm going to extrapolate will be from your guys' review of it.
That's a wise decision, Tom.
Yeah, so I mean, I was watching this, and I really expected it just to be mediocre. A lot of these things, you watch them, and they've got to get past a certain threshold of watchability to even get on the air or get commissioned for a couple of seasons, and they're not like screamingly bad. Things can be cliched and trite, but watching Designated Survivor, I was like, oh, this shit is just real absolute shit. And since then I've started watching a bit of another imperialist television program called Homeland, which you've probably heard of.
Yeah.
It's got some kind of standard interrogation in that. It's just like a guy just like pulls out a knife and stabs Damian Lewis in the hand. And they like show that Damian Lewis has gone to the dark side because he like starts praying to Allah and gets out a Quran. So look, but like even if you disagree with the ideology of American imperialism, which I do, even if like Mike Gapes would say in Gapecast about homosexuality, or the anti-capitalist artworks of the man he calls Banky, you disagree with the ideology.
Ah, yes, gorgeous Georgie's partner, gorgeous Gilbert. How are Georgie and Gilbert?
Still all loved up, warm as my heart to see them together, even if I disagree with their homosexual ideology. I collect anything and everything, from cave paintings to the graffiti crimes of Banky. Here is a Binky now. He's written the word corporations and drawn a cross through it. Powerful stuff, even if you don't agree with Bonky's ideology. You have to admire the craft. The only art I won't have besmirching my gallery is anything with Russian influences.
I think that there's a level of kind of competence to Homeland. It's effective drama. It's pretty well acted. The dialogue is not just a incessant parade of trite cliches and platitudes.
There's not never-ending shots of people walking down long corridors with papers passing them around, intensely talking and all that.
Yeah, I mean, see, you've not even seen the show, but yeah, there's loads of that in there. There's just so much.
Oh, is there?
Aaron Sorkin style walking and talking. It's so annoying, and the talking is like just the worst of all because it's just awful fucking dialogue. And there were like multiple points that I was watching this show. This is why I kind of...
we're back to Designated Survivor.
Designated Survivor, yeah, no, not Homeland so much. Designated Survivor, I think what made me want to talk about it with Yair was that I just kept saying kind of aloud to myself, like muttering under my breath, like while I was watching it, just like, this is an evil show. It's like I just, not like this is a bad or incompetent piece of television, which I did also come to think pretty early on in my viewing of it, I'll have to say. I started to think like there is something really insidious and vile about this show, and this is actually mainstream propaganda entertainment for the military-industrial complex and for America's God-given right to dominate the Western Hemisphere and the Eastern one for good measure. But that's a quote from Alex Cox's film Walker that I just wanted to get in. The most disgusting, base exaltation of America's role as world police.
100%, yeah. There's that one episode with the made-up country Kunami, where such stupid made-up names. Like, and there's a U.S. destroyer, isn't there, that sort of gets stuck in their waters.
Oh yeah.
And the ambassador from Kunami rightfully says to the president, if there was a Kunami destroyer in U.S. waters, you would be sinking it. And Kirkman doesn't say anything really in response to that.
It's just like, no, but we're
we
better.
need to save these sailors.
No, but we're America. You're foreign. And then
it always boils down to we America, we good,
Yeah, but Kirkman, I mean, is like, we gotta save these American boys. But in the end, he just accepts that this fucking psycho who's captain of the ship just, like, dies, just goes down with the ship, so that this country doesn't find out that, as they suspected, because it was obviously what was happening, this US military ship was in their waters to spy on them.
Yeah.
He's like, we can't find out that we were, like, parked outside the port of their capital city to gather intel on them covertly.
And there's no real discussion on the morality of that act, just that it's heroic that this guy is covering it up for the US.
Yeah. The president tries to talk him down. He's like, look, your life is more important. And he's like, no, Mr. President, national security comes first. And the president's like, well, that's his opinion, and I respect that. And just lets him kill himself for just an absolutely... Well, I'll call a lot of things stupid and dumb as fuck in this episode probably, but just like the most bootlicking reason, just so my country doesn't have to be held accountable for what it was doing. And when we say held accountable, like, Konami is not going to really be able to land much of a blow against America, probably, for violating its jurisdiction.
America that refuses to abide by any sort of standard of international law. Yeah,
exactly. America.
Admiral Chernow, you are in command. I would like to proceed with the attack in Algeria as planned.
Sir?
Admiral, prepare us for war.
That whole episode with the Konami thing is amazing because, as well as just like the rank politics, it showcases one of the show's most incessant and hilariously inept and insulting to the intelligence of the viewer dramatic tics, which is, so they do this thing, and they do it twice within the space of, like, there's one scene in between these two scenes where they do exactly the same thing, but they're watching the evil dictator of made-up bad Middle Eastern country on TV, and he's like, we have let me just...
You mentioned the name of this fictional country is called Kunami.
Yeah, like tsunami, but with a K instead of a TS.
IFLEG, to dominate in MC, making bitches touch their punani.
I was going to say, is that like the video game company Konami?
It is very similarly spelled.
Quite possibly. I mean, these guys are like, they're so fucking lazy that when it came to naming their Fidel or Raul Castro surrogate, they were just like, should we call him, let's think, Maduro or Chavez? Oh no, then they just looked at Nicaragua and they're like, oh, let's just call him Ortega. Literally, right. So fucking lazy.
And like in the episode with the made up Koreas, instead of North and South Korea, they've got what, East and West Honshu, but they call the leader of the bad one Mr. Kim.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because there's certain people who they've calculated, well, and when I say certain people, I mean certain entire nations and races who they've calculated that they like have nothing to lose by offending, particularly in the first two seasons where it's squarely American network TV and not a Netflix production. Yeah. But they're like, yeah, North Korea, fuck them, we're never going to sell the show there anyway. Venezuela, who cares, we're going to have invaded them within the next 10 years anyway. Cuba, fuck them. You know, it is basically just like left-wing countries or Muslim countries, I guess, like not ones that are allied to the US. Like, I don't think they directly mention Saudi Arabia, do they? Do they kind of have surrogates for Saudi Arabia?
Was it not Saudi Arabia? That episode, I think, in season 3, where there's the child bride.
No, they do. But that's season 3 is like the woke season when they're like,
right, yeah,
we're gonna take on the real social issues and downplay the foreign policy bomb first, think later dimensions of the show previously. So basically, this dramatic tic is like one character will say, oh my god, so this means, and then the other person will finish their sentence like, yes, it means that. So, like, at the start, when the Capitol building gets blown up and all the government gets killed, someone will be like, oh my god, so you're telling me, and then the other person will be like, yes, I'm telling you that somebody blew up the Capitol building and everybody in there got killed.
Very expository dialogue.
Yeah, but it kind of goes beyond expository. I mean, it's so clunkily done. Like, sometimes something will literally happen in front of you, and then they will explain what just happened that was spelt out in the absolute clearest of terms.
Does that mean? Yes, that means.
When the opportunity arises, I want to ask you about, because of course this started airing 2016, same year as the inauguration of Trump. I want to know, how do they depict the state of America in the show? Is it kind of Obama era? Everything's fine.
It's like, what if we had Obama, what if we had someone like Obama addressing the issues of the Trump era, when of course most of the issues of the Trump era were also issues during the tenure of a president who was a bit like Obama, shall we say?
But also, if around a dozen or so 9/11s happened in that time frame. There are so many massive national disasters that where hundreds of people are in danger or dying.
On pretty much a weekly basis. I don't know though, sometimes it gets kind of low stakes. I know, I guess they do try, I was saying it gets kind of low stakes, but they do try and like do a genocide at one point by like like these fucking weird fucks try and forcibly sterilize all minority communities or something. But the thing is, it's always such a cop-out in that it's just like a couple of rogue actors doing it. It's always just like a couple of guys who somehow like have the entirety of America on tenterhooks, and this is just like absolutely glaring throughout the show. They kind of build up this big conspiracy where the vice president, who gets appointed by President Cuckman, is like terrified of the fact that he, you know, people have obviously got something on him, and he's caught up in this conspiracy, and his wife's involved in the conspiracy, and she's even more into it than him, to the point that so they don't get caught, she kills him and then shoots herself. And it's just like, when the conspiracy just turns out to be like some cunt, you know, just like some sort of like military guy who's gone psycho and developed this like destructive ideology kind of thing.
They slightly set him up to be slightly Trumpish with that "we'll take America back" or what. Although WTAB is not as catchy as MAGA, I gotta say.
Are you talking about the
Lloyd?
George H.W. Oh, Lloyd, the terrorist guy who does
the guy who's behind the bombing and stuff. Yeah.
It feels like the show doesn't want to say, oh, there's like an element of the security state that's involved in this. It's all just kind of like bad eggs.
Yeah.
It's all bad individuals.
It doesn't touch on the fact that he has lots of support from these right-wing people. It's just kill him and you solve the problem.
The dramatic tick, like that. So in that episode where like there's the sort of hostage crisis where the American warship is fucking docked in like made-up country. The president is in ultra brainiac mode. He's got his glasses on that apparently, according to his aides, don't look very presidential, and he's like stroking his chin like, my god, this situation gets more complicated by the minute. And then the president of made up country comes on the TV and he's like, we have seized the boat from the American dogs. We now have this boat. I repeat, the boat is in our possession. And the president is like, my god, we now know what they wanted. ... The boat. And then, like, 2 scenes later, some fucking shit happens. And again, I guess, like, the president of made up country comes on TV in his national address where he reveals all his secret plans. He's like, now we have seized the boat from the Americans. We are going to trade it back to them for permission to start a nuclear weapons program. And the president is watching this and he's like, oh my god. you know what this means. They're gonna try and trade the boat back with us for a nuclear weapons program. Like, it's absolutely incredible. Like, every step is just like it's laid out for you and laid out again just in case you missed it. I guess like that was my key takeaway from the show, is just its firebombing approach to diplomacy. So there'll always be these scenes where the president has to meet some kind of foreign diplomat, and they'll come into his room and he'll just proceed to like belittle, insult, threaten them and their families and the governments of their countries. At the very start, Iran are like up to some shit. Apparently they're like militarizing a certain area because they figure, the US have let their guard down because their entire government's been blown up and all that. So Iran like send these troops out. So he's literally saying this right now in the scene, that the Iranians have like had a military presence in this area for the last 35 years after General Jack D. Ripper is like, I want blood, we need blood. And then, despite knowing full well that this is just like a ridiculous like, overreaction, Iran have again been pursuing this goal for like 35 years, he calls up the Iranian ambassador to the Oval Office, and he's just like, listen, you motherfucker, I will kill your entire fucking government. I think, what he says is, you do not want the international headlines to go from the tragic loss of our government to the decimation of your capital city. And he is like, basically, like, we will rain hellfire, rolling thunder upon you, the likes of which you have never seen.
My Defense Department has wargamed this out. They're waiting for me to give them the green light, which I assure you I will do, unless you pull your destroyers back to Bandar Abbas within the next 3 hours.
Mr. President,
Mr. Ambassador, you may not know much about me, but what you should know is that I'm about as straight a shooter as you're going to find in Washington. So you should believe me when I tell you that I do not want, as my first act as Commander-in-Chief, to attack Iran. But as both of us know, it's not always up to us how history plays itself out. Now, I have chosen to believe that your country is not playing on our emotions tonight, but nevertheless, you will feel the full impact of them if you do not comply with my demands. Mr. Ambassador, dock your destroyers, or the lead story on the morning news will not be about the attack on our capital, but the devastating attack on yours. Please, Mr. Ambassador, let's not get off on the wrong foot here tonight.
Mr. President, I will speak with my government.
Thank you, Mr. Ambassador.
I just got to add that that is the anti-war position in the show.
Yeah.
That's what you do to prevent a war. You're like, I'm going to murder your entire fucking government.
Isn't that around the same time where he's saying to all his generals, like, I will personally slit every Iranian's throat, but you need to be 100% sure it was them, not 80%.
Exactly,
100%.
The sensible centrist position. I will drink the blood of every Iranian woman and child, but I need to know that they are actually Iranian and not the country next door.
We need the right kind of intel, not the intel we got back in 2002 when we went into the other one.
Listen, just as long as I don't drink any Saudi children's blood, because we have oil interests there, that is not part of the deal.
So the show, the central premise is, as we've already discussed, someone who is unlikely to take the presidency gets the presidency through a long-standing tradition. I'm guessing there's a thread that runs through each of the 3 seasons, but the central premise is basically
you'd be wrong.
Set up this, it's to set up this American president character who has to become gung-ho and has to say stuff that you wouldn't expect of a president. He has to become this. Is that what they're trying to do? Like this kind of trying to show?
No, not really.
Is there a consistent thread that runs through the series at least, or
no,
is it? Okay, it's not an initial setup to then let other stories come from it. It's typical of most television we get these days.
After the end of the first season, pretty much the only reference you really get to the original premise is that he's sometimes a little unsure, the president, you know? Like,
yeah, they pretty much drop it. It's just like, no, it was just that one mad cunt. It's fine, it's all sorted out.
They kill the guy at the end of the first season who did the bombing, and then that's it. That's story done.
Like, right at the start, like, the governor of Michigan has responded to the terrorist attack by just deciding to, like, lock up every single Muslim in Michigan, which has the highest Muslim population in America. And so he's just literally on some, like, Nazi shit. And the president is, like, pretty pissed because he's violating people's constitutional rights and all that. And the president, like, tries to reason with him and eventually has him arrested for treason and put in jail. And then, again, just once you take the bad apple out of the equation, it's all sorted. There's no mention to, like, the situation in Michigan again. Like,
all the
Islamophobia
cops and the
is
National
sorted.
Guard who was perfectly willing to go through with those orders. Perfectly.
They were willing to fucking secede. They were literally like, we've declared independence.
Michigan.
And then the president just puts the ringleader in jail, and they're like, alright, we go home. That's like the first real, like, big dick move from Kirkman when he arrests the guy for treason.
If I may. You may not. Governor, you violated the rights of the citizens of Michigan, and today you conspired with the National Guard to defy a direct order from the president. James Royce, I am placing you under arrest for treason against the United States of America. Marshals.
Reasonable and thoughtful, huh?
Most of the diplomatic conduct that you've described in the show sounds like something you'd see in, like, Decca. It's like,
it's like, I'm gonna you're arrested for treason, Mr. Taliban.
This is the old abandoned CIA zipline station. Why'd they ever mothball it?
Davidson shut down the zipline station last year to protect the Hawaiian tree frogs.
Typical bullshit from Davidson, always kowtowing to the special interests. Because he keeps prioritizing frogs over families. The only endangered species we're gonna have to worry about is us, humans.
Yeah.
I better get going so I can attack the Taliban.
It's pretty much like that.
I was truly shocked that Texas didn't secede.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it was just, I guess they just could only focus on
They
the
say
one
that
state.
every election. You know?
And it's one hideously bald governor. And the police in Michigan kill this young Muslim boy. Around this time, the Republican Party's designated survivor, which, just to explain, is like the member of the cabinet, or I guess the Republican shadow cabinet, if it's even called that in America, who gets to sit out the State of the Union address in case something happens, like the Capitol is bombed and or the entire government's killed. So, like, the Republicans have an equivalent of Cuckman, and she is called Kimball Hook Stratton.
Made up name.
Yeah, ridiculous fucking name. Like, what the fuck? And she has, like, no discernible right-wing views. Not really any discernible views at all. You know, in the end, he makes her his education secretary, and she just completely disappears. Like, I guess education isn't a priority of the Kirkman government. Like, the kids have got to fend for themselves. But she has no, like, discernible Republican views, really, apart from, like, at the start, when this, like, fucking psycho is like, yeah, I'm bald, I'm gonna kill the Muslims, yeah. And his actions are directly responsible for the death of this young boy. And she's like, he's a good man. He's just wrong. I'm like, it's a pretty big thing to be wrong over, and suggests to me maybe he's not a good man. So I guess that's the show's, like, idea of grown-up bipartisanship, is like, hey, look, just because you kill little children, it doesn't mean that's your beliefs, and I respect that. And of course, like I was going to say to Tom in his answer, is it about he does things you wouldn't expect of a president? No, it's an extremely conservative show. It loves the office of the presidency, and it's basically like, whoever you are, whatever you believe, once you're in the presidency, you become the president, which is obviously not true because Donald Trump, but there's a reason that this fantasy was made concurrently with the Trump era, I think, because people still want to believe in the sanctity of the office.
Yeah. It's almost like a sort of redemptive propaganda for the presidency.
Yeah. And so I say, well, how can Kimball Hook-Stratton forgive...
Cook-Stratton.
Cook-Stratton, a real conservative. How can she forgive, like, baldy, hideously bald man for being responsible for that kid's death? And it's like, well, Tom Kirkman kills kids in this as well. Like, he's in one episode, the US, they're doing a military campaign somewhere. They're like bombing the shit out of like somewhere in the Middle East, I think. And the foreign bastards, for some reason, they decide to cover up a hospital, presumably to trick the lovely benevolent US into bombing the hospital, as you do. So they disguise the hospital so that the US have no choice but to bomb it and kill 22 civilians, including children. So the generals, I think he may have sacked Jack D. Ripper at this point, so he's just got like General Gapes and General Akehurst with their more moderate foreign policy views, and they're like, sir, should we like de-escalate the bombing campaign? And he's just like, no, just make sure you don't kill any civilians. It's like, oh, that's all right then. I guess like the first stage of the bombing campaign, they had a like, okay, you can kill a few civilians remit. Just try and like keep it under 20, and they did 22, and bad optics and all that.
Well, it's just about everything is a false flag or crisis actors. So it doesn't really surprise me that they would be. How dare they make us bomb that hospital by not making it more obvious that it's a hospital?
That's like the classic thing, is that they've got to have this kind of like get out clause of like, oh no, but the US weren't just like brutally bombing the place. They wouldn't do that. They would have obviously held their fire if only they knew. But sadly, you just can't trust these foreigners because they're always up to their tricks.
Trying to score points.
What were some other like schemes that the foreigners got up to in the course of the show?
Of course, Russia and Russia was paying those Ukrainian terrorists to take over a plane.
Yeah, that was so clearly a reference to that plane that disappeared, wasn't it? I guess, like, over Ukraine.
Yeah, it's probably something like that, yeah. And this isn't really political, but they did, oh man, at the beginning of the episode, the president finds out there's a person I've never mentioned before, but who I knew and was really close to on this plane. Oh no. And I was like, he's gonna die, isn't he? And lo and behold, they saved every single fucker on the plane, and he still finds a way to die.
Yeah, no, he's a doctor, and he dies, again, like the American, it's just, again, like, there's saving lives in the capacity as a doctor, and then, like, protecting the US's nefarious spying campaigns around the world. These have equal moral weight. But yeah, just like the guy who went down with his ship, the doctor, like, refuses to leave the plane because he's tending to one ill patient who somehow manages to get out, but he doesn't. Like, they're just like, oh, sorry, here, I'll just push you up. Oh no, I'm stuck in the plane. Absolutely ridiculous, mawkish shit.
You can very easily tell when they've just introduced somebody to kill them off later. There was another one, I can't remember the exact specifics of the episode, but the president goes to meet some soldiers who are going to go out and do a special ops mission. And of course, one of them has a sob story about, like, well, this is not a sob story yet, but he's got like a baby on the way and he's got a wife back home. And you're like, what's going to happen to you, huh? He doesn't make it back.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. That's like the one guy. They're like, just before the mission, like the commander's like, I'm pretty happy to say that the Navy SEALs have never lost a single man in the line of duty. It's like, oh, well, I think that record may be broken tonight, my friend. And then he's so upset about that. He's way more upset about that the one Navy SEAL who dies than he is about the 22 civilians who he personally has killed.
Yeah.
That episode with Russian plane crisis, you also get again to meet some ambassadors, the Russian and the Ukrainian ambassadors, who are both just like comedy fat men, like bald Boris Yeltsin lookalikes, like, you know,
a bit like
birthmarks
from
bigger than
Borat
their
or
actual
something.
heads. Yeah, exactly. And they're just like swigging vodka in the Oval Office, like, oh, I am stupid. Like, I think the Ukrainian guy is just like, oh, I am a comedy foreigner, and then the Russian guy is like, I am a sinister foreigner. And they sort of have a good cop, bad cop thing going.
Don't bother sitting down. You won't be here long enough.
Mr. President, my country
Has done absolutely nothing but sit on its hands. Not a single overture to the hijackers.
Yes, because they do not listen to us.
And your country, Ambassador Pavlov.
Does not negotiate with terrorists.
Especially with the ones they're paying.
Mr. President, I fear you are seriously misinformed.
No, sir. You have been the one who has misinformed me, and I don't think I need to explain the ramifications of Americans being killed on American soil by terrorists sponsored by Russia.
It usually is how, like with the Cuba episode, same exact thing, isn't it? Where they've got the good Cubans and the bad Cubans, but really they're both working together and there is only bad Cubans.
Oh my god, the Cuban episode is insane. Let's talk about that
What's
now.
going on in Cuba? Yeah.
Yeah, President...
They don't seem to have a Castro-related regime, but they also don't say anything about there being a revolution, do they?
I don't know. There's no politics mentioned, but I guess in this show, like, they don't really understand. You know, it's written at a kind of like a 3-year-old's reading level, basically. I mean,
the rebels do mention communism like once.
I believe they call an American a capitalist pig, but it then turns out that they're working with this American capitalist.
Yeah.
But I got so fucking confused because, like, the American delegation, including very senior diplomats, is kidnapped as soon as they get into Cuba. Like, apparently no security or anything for this lot. They're kidnapped by a crew of vicious warriors, and you're to assume that they're right-wingers because the government of Cuba is left-wing, and they've said nothing to assuage you of the fact that the Cuban I'm so tired. But the Cuban government are left wing in this episode. Then you meet the rebels, and yet they don't seem to have any discernible politics until they say to the American, "You capitalist pig." So it's like, are these guys even more left wing than the Cuban revolutionary government? But it turns out that they're just stooges for the government anyway. And then Tom Kirkman invades Cuba, and he
reluctantly.
Yeah, and then he ends the Cuban Revolution after 60 years and starts a process of democracy, which I presume means heavy market reforms and probably war. But like the next, you know how like when the US brought democracy to Iraq, it's going to be like that in Cuba.
Success. They don't even float the idea of it being the 52nd state or anything like that.
No, not quite.
That's what they want.
Since the 19th century.
Isn't the Cuba episode around the time his wife dies? And she just gets... It's such an anticlimactic death. Like,
it comes out of nowhere. It's like the only accident in the entire show.
Yeah, exactly. Everything else happens for a reason, but she just gets fucking T-boned by some drunk driver while she's in her massive motorcade, where they're really supposed to be looking out for this kind of thing. But
is this season 2? Is it?
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
So it's like
fucking...
like a third of the way through season 2. Yeah.
Interesting, because of course the show got cancelled eventually because of complications of actors' contracts. So maybe they were starting to write out characters because they could foresee a financial problem there, or maybe keep the Sullivan.
They did randomly kill Hannah Wells. Yeah.
Oh yeah, she just gets fucking iced. Like, I was like, oh, how is she gonna get out of this one? Because she's like invincible prior to that. And then it's just like, oh no, this guy has just like got her with poison gas and she's just dead. It's such an anticlimactic death. But yeah, his wife just gets killed for no reason, and the president, he just turns into a massive pussy. I don't know how else to put it. But before, where he's always just like, we're gonna send in troops, I'm gonna personally kill this person, you know, etc., etc. He's just like,
does he actually murder anyone on the show?
No.
Like personally, physically?
Not personally, just his capacity
so.
as president. But he's just basically like, no, my wife's died. I don't want to do wars anymore. I'm not a real man.
What if we give these countries a chance to resolve their conflicts peacefully?
Yeah, so he starts doing insane shit, like pulling 50% of American troops out of Iraq and Afghanistan. Also increasing the domestic security budget, which apparently is a dovish gesture for some reason. Like,
let's bring the soldiers back home so they can police our state.
Yeah. Oh, did you know the president's just given billions of dollars to the FBI? Will our streets be safe again? So that's really weird. But also he becomes really hesitant. Everyone around him is like, we've got to invade Cuba. We've got to do this now. We can finally break Ortega's Sandinista stronghold with the Cuban people. And the president he's just kind of bowing his head, and he's like, guys, can you just fuck off? I'm going through a lot right now, and I need some R&R, and I can't do any wars right now. Just please leave me alone, Mum, and stop banging on the door. So there's also a really fun
when my wife has just died. Can we please think about the imperialism another day when I get over the death of my wife?
But look, this is enlightened. This is liberal imperialism, okay? This show is firmly in the 21st century.
This is the human imperialism that the Americans have been striving for years.
Believes in a little thing called self-care. So, look, Kirkman, he gets therapy. He sees this guy a therapist, and he talks him through the whole his wife being dead situation, and he sorts out his mental health. It's all good. And he's like, we're sending troops into Cuba now. Instantly, like, he just gets he suffers a terrible personal loss, becomes a massive fucking pussy, gets therapy, and is cured of his pussydom and loves war again. That's apparently, like, literally, the show equates dovish foreign policy with poor mental health.
Sir, all that remains is for you to okay the wire transfer.
Where do we stand on the release of the hostages?
We have Ramon Bravo's promise that he'll put them on a bus to Marti International Airport as soon as he can confirm receipt of the funds.
Sir, the essence of ransom is blind faith. Bravo will either keep his word or he won't.
Mr. President.
If you bring unresolved emotion into the decisional process...
I don't.
Not intentionally, Tom.
General, cancel the wire transfer.
Sir.
How long will it take you to get your men ashore?
45 minutes, sir.
Bring the fleet in as close to land as possible. If a show of force doesn't get the insurgents to back down, send in the Marines.
Yes, sir.
I'll have a congressional statement of support ready to issue.
Good.
What the hell just happened?
He made the hard decision, but the right one. I think the president's back.
Hallelujah.
And that's also his greatest flaw throughout the entire show as a character, is that he was sad when his wife died, pretty much.
Yeah. It's just like, how can we trust a man who's sad that his wife died? These are not emotions that we, the American people, feel.
Because they even go through with invoking the 25th Amendment. and
I was happy when my wife died. People can choose who that was saying that. I was happy when my wife died. Goodness gracious, great balls of fire. Yeah, so he basically cures his cuckness and becomes, a different kind of cuck, a warrior cuck. And he sorts that all out and he invades Cuba.
So these issues, so is this like over several episodes, or is this just in this
I can't even remember, they all blur together.
I believe there was just one Cuba episode, but sometimes they kind of, like, I think the Korean thing
made
was
it
2
count.
episodes. And, well, the arc of his mental health does continue to be part of the story, because then his cabinet finds out that he was seeing a psychologist, and they put him on trial, essentially.
Oh, yeah!
Yeah, the 25th Amendment
I watched
thing.
that. I was so unsympathetic because he had to do a Senate hearing or something.
Yeah.
So it was only
The Senate's
100?
The Senate's 100 people.
Yeah, because there's 2 per state, aren't there? So
Yeah.
that's only 100 people. Corbyn had 180 MPs going up one after the other to tell him what a cunt he was in 2016. 100 is a fucking walk in the park, and Corbyn just basically stood there and took it all. Whereas Tom Cuckman is just like, well, you know what? Fuck you guys. I'm gonna kill myself. If
Yes, I'm gonna
be
kill
mean to me."
myself.
Yeah, he just storms off, and it's like, well, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, and especially fuck you. I am going to my room. And I had very little sympathy for him.
Very
in that moment.
unstatesmanlike. Very unstatesmanlike.
Yeah, I guess he was upset about his wife still. So maybe I had a bit
Jack.
of sympathy for.
Come
on.
He has
Oh
a
man,
country to lead, Jack.
the way that they cover Confederate monuments.
Oh my
is
fucking god!
Insane.
Go on.
Like, it's so out of step with the times. I guess they did that episode. It must have been a couple of years ago or something, but they conclude basically this is cut and dry because the president thinks it, and a wise, venerable black character thinks it, so you can assume that this is the official line of the show, that Confederate statues need to stay up so that we don't whitewash our history.
I thought he was persuaded at the end to back away from that position. I know he spent like the whole episode saying, as a black man, I think we need to keep Confederate statues standing because
such a weird character.
They
remind... He's like
yeah.
this campaigning reverend who led civil rights marches.
Reverend Dale, this is a great honor for me.
The honor is mine, sir.
I also wanted to thank you for your willingness to compromise on the statue. In the end, we moved it to an area that was less trafficked. I know that's not what you wanted.
No, sir. I believe we sanitize history at our peril. It's nice when it's history we don't like.
But not when it's something we do.
Yes, sir. It's a dangerous precedent we set here today, sir.
I don't disagree with you, but sometimes compromise seems to be the only way to move forward.
Well, you can thank your pistol of a young lawyer here for bringing me around. She reminded me that there's no virtue in absolutism. Old lions like me can be stubborn.
Yet they still roar.
Mr. President.
Reverend, please.
Reverend Dale, may I lead you out, sir?
No, but you may walk with me.
I'm looking at the list of historical designated survivors, and imagine if we got Rick Perry. Rick Perry was a designated survivor at one point during the State of the Union back in last year, or no, 2019.
I mean, I was thinking what would have been the ideal State of the Union address to get designated survivored. I mean, obviously the one that comes to mind is George Bush Axis of Evil speech. That really did feel like that room was the axis of evil in the world at that time, and that the world would have been significantly better off without that.
Apparently, Dick Cheney was one of the designated survivors for the joint address.
Yeah.
Fuck. Imagine if Dick Cheney had been president from 2001 to 2009, as opposed to
you mean he wasn't?
Dick Cheney being president. Yeah.
Everyone's thinking the same thing.
The other one would have been, I think it might have been the 2012. Yeah, I think 2012 because it was mid Obama. And some dickhead Republican invited Ted Nugent along to be his guest at the speech, and it turns out that this guy is now in prison for some kind of fraud. So it's just kind of funny. You're like, oh, what kind of career would the sort of politician who'd invite Ted Nugent to the State of the Union address have, and it's like, yeah, okay, they're in prison. Yeah, that adds up.
Checks out.
But yeah, anyway, that one could have been hit, you know. But I guess all of you, they've never picked Bernie to be designated survivor. They would never, ever... I guess he's never been in the cabinet, but in every single situation, I bet at least one good person is going to be killed. Maybe just one. But is one good American too big a price to pay?
Well, as Secretary of State Moss says, 15 American lives are more important than 100,000 non-American lives.
Yeah. One American life is more important than 100 million non-American lives. The funniest bit, I think, or not, it's not so much funny. What I guess I thought was really grotesque, and I don't remember if, like you say, the Reverend did change his mind on the issue at the end of the episode, but in the whole Confederate monuments debate, the way they portray it is such a, like, tacky, reductive, like, oh, why can't we all get along, sort of, like, a way of portraying, like, a debate around racism, which is just that it's two equal sides screaming at each other in an equally beastly way. They're all just like, you're racist, no, you're racist, you're racist, no, you're racist, you're racist against black people, you're racist against white people, and it just goes on, and it's basically saying, they're all so childish, why can't they come to a sensible compromise position, like the president, and also this radical black character who we've included to validate the president.
So that it's not just a white dude saying it. Yeah.
That truly sucked, honestly. But
that was definitely a really terrible take. That was probably one of their worst takes in season 3. For the most part, they weren't. That was where their politics got slightly less shitty, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I still feel like you can't really, like, clap them on the back too much. No. Like, you said, like, oh, I dread to think what kind of compromise they're going to find on the trans rights debate. And I kind of said, well, look, they're not, like, screamingly offensive on the trans rights stuff. They're not wrong on most of the issues in season 3. It's just trite and banal the way they address this stuff. It's all been said, it's all been done, and it's really kind of like freakish and grotesque how they incorporate real people's harrowing testimonials in archive footage into this fundamentally, profoundly silly show.
After 2 seasons of, this profoundly silly, as you say, network television show, in season 3, they randomly are like, all right, let's get them by the feels and bring in these gut-wrenching tearjerkers.
We're going to take on the issues, and we're going to be as realistic as possible in this show where it's just like the West Wing, but with like 20 years ago, I guess the idea of good looks has changed slightly, and just like in the West Wing, everyone has like slightly too big heads or something. I'm just going from my image of the West Wing cast here, but just like modern day supermodels being in the West Wing, but with like a bit more racy counter-terrorism, and you know, like then they're like, oh, we're gonna have like this person talking about how Big Pharma like killed their mum. We're just gonna throw that in there. We can't just write a story about the evil that Big Pharma do. We've got to beat you around the head with stuff that Bernie Sanders could have used, but would have probably considered too manipulative political campaign.
Yeah. And titling every episode in season 3 hashtag this, hashtag that.
Oh, that again is like gonna age so badly. So yeah, there are some like differences in season 3, which are basically like, the foreign policy stuff is mostly gone, partly because he's running for re-election and Americans don't care about that foreign policy nonsense, whatever. He's focusing on his domestic agenda, or literally just really not the agenda so much as just running to be president, but also probably because the show is now on Netflix, and Netflix want to pitch it to as wide a possible audience, and they're like, hey, maybe if your president says that he's going to napalm that nursery in that city, that's quite a populous area. The president is saying that he'll kill several thousand children there. Maybe we should just wind that back. They de-emphasize that, and they also bring in some new elements, such as loads of swearing. Now they all get to indulge their inner Malcolm Tucker. There's one bit where Kumar from Harold and Kumar calls this guy a cunt. It's pretty hardcore. You don't often get that in American shows.
No. Especially after season 1 and 2 is just son of a bitch, son of a bitch, son of a bitch, son of a bitch.
Yeah, exactly. Just literally the same non-swears over and over again, and then just it's all fuck you, suck my fucking dick, you motherfucker. Tom Kirkman is just our fucking constitution is the greatest goddamn piece of shit I've ever fucking seen.
According to this, I think the reason...
I got a lot of cunting faith in the American people. I've always felt they were a fantastic bunch of fucking great geezers.
Probably the ante on the swearing, probably because by the 3rd season, that's when it switched over to Netflix.
Yeah.
The first 2 seasons were ABC.
Yeah,
so with Netflix, you've got your complete... I don't know if you've already...
You
can say what you want.
Yep. Twin Peaks season 3 kind of vibes, except nowhere near as good, and also half as long. It's literally half the length of all the other seasons. Oh man, I mentioned Kumar from Harold and Kumar is in it, a bit really hated. So the show is always kind of trying to address the hot button issues, and right around the start when the shit's happening in Michigan, the Muslims are being persecuted, and there's a real atmosphere of fear. Kumar Kalpen, that's it, the actor's name. He gets stopped and searched by the police for no reason. Later, he gets stopped and searched and arrested for having loads of modafinil on him.
Yeah!
The study drug. Super weird. But anyway, this time he hasn't done anything wrong. He's just being racially profiled. But then, at the end of the episode, he's at a memorial for all the people who were killed in the attack. And this cop just kind of is eyeing him up. And the cop walks towards him, and you see a kind of oh no, here we go again expression on Kumar's face. And then the cop just kind of stands next to him in silent, solemn respect for the dead.
Not all
and it's
cops.
just kind of yeah, it's not all cops, bro. We're all Americans here. We can come together, bonded by what unites us. Awful. Really awful load of shit. Cop out ending for an episode largely about police brutality.
Yeah.
I want to ask...
Just constantly hedging its bets.
And I'd also like to add it the second time, modafinil, what the heck? That's the most pussy-ass drug you can get in trouble for.
Well, I guess this is some nerd from the fucking White House.
But, it's not even, speed or something. Disgraceful.
I mean, yeah, but he's a speechwriter, not a trucker.
I want to ask, because at the start of your conversation you said this is a pretty offensive show. What by far is the
evil? Evil was the word I
probably
used.
Probably more apt, isn't it? What would you say is the most evil / offensive episode in the 3 seasons? Take your time.
I mean, there's definitely the Cuba one was definitely up there. The one where he kills all the children in the hospital, and then they're just oh well, shit happens. Better luck next time. that was a pretty repugnant one. I'm trying to think what other really evil shit happens. I guess it's always just kind of the stuff when he's just well, we gotta bomb, we gotta go to war.
Maybe one of the top ones might be that, I think it's in season 3, where there's a truck protest, they block all the roads into Mexico.
And organized labor are just portrayed as a bunch of racist Neanderthals.
Yeah. Which I've heard so many bad things about organized labor, but that's a new one to me.
Yeah, I mean, in the 3rd season, there's a pro-labor episode, but it's a teacher's strike, which is the okay union to support. Not in Britain under the Conservatives, obviously, but I mean just generally. You're like, oh, teachers' union, that's fine. Truckers' union, get these fucking speed-addled thugs in jail.
So it's anti-trucker, but it's also not very good politics for like Mexican relations, you know, like
no,
immigrants.
It's just like the Mexicans send out one of their own guys to drive
just right through the border, just full speed.
Right through the border and get himself killed by a bunch of gun-toting, again, just like degenerate, animalistic working-class Americans.
Yeah,
it's
and
like
it's a plot
racist.
by the foreign delegation and the Mexican government working together and bribing and stuff.
All these foreign governments, man, they're always into something, man.
Can't they just have a nice, clean, above-board politics like the American government?
Yeah. I mean, like, what's the difference between this guy basically just like risking his life for some like covert shit and that stupid cunt who went down with his ship in the made-up country? But there's another bit as well. There's some kind of diplomatic crisis that they have in Turkey, and he's at this G8 meeting or something. It's NATO. It's beloved NATO. He's with all the other world leaders, and the Turkish leader is saying like, oh, well, blah 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 blah. We might have to, because you're being mean to us, maybe we'll have to get rid of all the American military bases in Turkey. And he just flies off the fucking handle. He's like, you motherfucker! He just like gets up, like throws something across the room, grabs them by the fucking throat. He's like, how dare you threaten to take down our American military bases? And this is what he says, this is direct quote, that we know protect us all. And I have got news for you about the perspectives of other countries around the world on American military presence in their countries. He literally, not just the character, but I guess the people writing the show, can't contemplate that an American president might even have the kind of empathy to see that American military bases are not always wanted.
Yeah.
They're just like, well, of course they want us. He just kind of assumes, well, of course everyone in this room knows that American military bases
it's a given.
Protect us all. That's just objective fact. You can't dispute that. It's like arguing with the sun.
It reminds me as well of the incident wherein France is apparently calling for a reduction in nuclear armaments in Europe. And and Kirkman flies out to Europe to go deal with that. And then once he gets there, the French politician is like, you had some scandal. Now I don't want to talk about removing the nukes that I wanted removed.
Yeah. She's just like, oh, sorry. In case you didn't notice, I am not American. And you should have known that I am only out for myself and whatever nebulous, vague, specious benefit I'm supposed to gain from this blatant policy U-turn.
Yeah.
That may be when the Turkey thing happens as well, actually, in that whole international summit. There's this weird thing where, so Cornelius Fudge or whatever. Fucking Cornelius, what's his name? George H.W. Bush, whatever, is warning him about the French Prime Minister, and he's like, she's tougher than Joan of Arc and just as chauvinistic. I'm like, was Joan of Arc known for her chauvinism?
It's a weird word choice, since it's usually associated with misogyny, but, I mean...
You try being a woman getting ahead in war in Joan of Arc's time, bro. Cornelius. See how you would have fared.
Moss, he grows on a stone.
And also, I just think, what the fuck position is this, wrinkly old CIA yank fuck in to call a French woman chauvinistic? Glass houses, bro. But he manages to actually bring the French PM around because he's like, listen, let me put it to you like this. This will blow your mind. What kind of a world do we want to leave for our children? And she's like, my God, I never thought about it like that. Thank you. I, again, think that we should continue our shared goal, which America definitely possesses, of ridding the world of nuclear weapons. You also get to meet the British Prime Minister.
A consensus builder, yes.
Yeah, she's a British Indian woman, so presumably centrist Priti Patel, I guess. You meet her twice. So the first time, the president is like doing his thing, he's fucking owning the room. The Russian is like, oh, Mr. President, I have a dirty trick. And he's like in fluent Russian. He's like, not so fast, Mr. Russian. And then the French person is like, I am chauvinistic. I am a self-hating woman. What are women like, eh? They are ridiculous. And he's like, again, in fluent French, now, I personally happen to really respect women. And everyone's like, fucking hell, I've never heard something so profound. But anyway, while he's like just owning the room like that, you basically hear the British Prime Minister say one thing, which is to go, and to like nod along to something he says. She's like, wow. She's like, yeah, this American knows what he's talking about. And then you see her later, and like a typical fucking duplicitous foreign snake, non-American piece of shit, she's up there and she's turned and she's like conspiring with France and Russia and ISIS and the rest to basically have a go at Kirkman for being too cavalier and going to war with people. And she's like, we have learned from our mistakes in Iraq, we meaning Britain. Which is like, citation needed. Although actually I will say I think the Tory party have probably learned more of a lesson from Iraq than the Labour right.
Hey, maybe in this universe, Tony Blair went before The Hague.
Yeah. To be honest, that would probably be more popular in Britain at this point if we just arrest Corbyn and try him on some false pretenses. Like, propaganda works. That's why we're reviewing it. That's why we support. We're dyed-in-the-wool liberal interventionists now because of being treated to all of fucking designated survivor. Oh, Venezuela gets a little cameo as well because this fucking traitor, he is repeatedly referred to as a traitor, despite the fact that he is like the most patriotic whistleblower of all time. Like, this guy makes Snowden look like a jihadist. He's very, very patriotic, and he's leaked what he leaked purely in the interest of American national security. Everyone in the show knows that what he did was right, but the president's just like, well, you're going to prison anyway. If only there was some kind of person residing in, say, some kind of large White House who could issue executive orders commuting people's sentences when they've been wrongly convicted. But look, rules are rules. They're in place for a reason, and that really is the fundamental ideology of designated survivor, basically deference to America's great institutions. So I'm afraid you leak classified intel, you are going to prison, even if you were right and the president knows you were right and is like, wow, you've done a brave thing here. Bye then. He's just like, you've done a great thing, sir. Fuck off to jail now, please.
Speaking of the presidential pardon, there is that episode of the 3-letter day where one of the 3 subplots has them investigating that guy who's on death row who killed someone, a cop during a ketamine bust.
A cat bust, really? I missed this.
Oh man, it was golden. It was golden. Turns out that
I think it's coming back to me.
The guy didn't actually do the murder. He was covering up for his son who did the murder.
Oh yeah.
And I just didn't really understand the resolution to that, because Kirkman's solution is that rather than completely pardoning him, this guy who didn't do anything wrong technically, he just commutes his sentence to life imprisonment.
Yeah. It's just like, well, that's all right then.
And he's like, that way he does. But the son got arrested for almost murdering Hannah Wells, the FBI agent. Anyway, he's going to jail. He's not being protected by his father. But it's meant to be this great diplomatic resolution where the guy on death row doesn't have to admit that his son did the murder. he can just
Yeah.
die in prison. I don't know.
Wow, what a great place, America. Can we, like, do a little bit of role play? Just a little sexy role play. I wanna demonstrate Hannah Wells. Oh, I don't know how we're gonna do this without, like, it being done in advance. Actually, no, I'll direct as well as play FBI agent, special agent Hannah Wells. Okay, so yeah, right, you're a terrorist.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so shit, I shouldn't have said that on air. I just thought I'd remind you. Okay.
Just
so
the
anyway,
dialogue in this show. Hey, you know how you're a terrorist?
Okay, well, so we both know you're a terrorist, but you're keeping tight-lipped about it.
Yeah.
I'm interrogating. I brought you in. Listen, you motherfucker. You're a real piece of shit, you know that?
You can't prove nothing.
Fuck you! Shut up! How dare you talk to me? Fuck you! You're a piece of shit, you know that? You're vermin. You're lower than a worm. You're a little gusano. That's what we call you in Cuba.
I can't take it anymore. I'll tell you whatever you want to hear.
No, they don't do that.
So?
Anyway, so she keeps abusing them a bit more. She's like, I'm gonna murder your family, right? I've got your wife and kids back here. I'm gonna throw them off the top of the building. I'm gonna make sure that you're kept literally in a hole underground. I'm gonna make sure you're buried alive. Listen, you motherfucker. Now, then, do they reveal the information now that she's threatened them and their family?
No, you'll never get it out of me.
You motherfucker. Okay, right. So now I'm going to get up and pretend to walk out of the room. And just as I get to the door...
Wait!
Yeah, exactly. You're going to reveal everything to me.
I must confess.
And that is her only interrogation technique. Because it's already established early on in the show. The show doesn't approve of waterboarding. Just because it doesn't work. They say early on. But hasn't it been
does
proven
approve
that enhanced
of Kung
interrogation? Yeah, exactly. Well, alright, she does a bit of... But the Kung Fu's more in the course of apprehending the suspects than interrogating.
Yeah.
Sadly, she doesn't just, like, pull a knife out and ram it in one of their hands, like the guy in Homeland. But I love how they just do that over and over again. Like, she always just gets them with a walkout trick, and they are always just fucking dumbfounded every time. You'd think, like, in terrorist circles, after a while, they'd start being like, right, when FBI agent Hannah Wells pulls you in, she's gonna do a thing. And you gotta stay strong. I know it's terrifying when she's walking out of that door. You want her to stay and call you a piece of shit. Just be like, you cunt. But you gotta let her walk out that door. And they're like, yep, fine. I understand the instructions. Let her walk out the door. And then just as she's walking out the door, no, wait! And then they're just thinking, it just internally, damn it. I let that happen again.
I've been tricked.
This is the last thing that we wanted to happen.
Also, if you don't want to be identified, be sure not to take a photograph of anything you've touched, because they can zoom and enhance and get fingerprints off of wine glasses in the background of photos.
Oh yeah, that was pretty cool. Did we establish who fucking Cornelius Fudge actually is? Cornelius Cook.
The good old Mossy Stone?
Yeah. So, remind me, is Donald Trump the 45th president?
Yes.
Right, so Cornelius is meant to be the 44th president.
So he's Obama?
So is he actually...
Obama got a race change?
But here's the thing. He wasn't killed. So, there was clearly a 45th president in between him and Tom Kirkman.
So it takes place in the future, basically?
Yeah, this show is sci-fi.
That would explain all the ridiculousness.
I mean, it certainly isn't the world I recognize.
I mean, yeah, the Cuban government is different.
Yeah, but they kind of suggest that it's a government that's been in power a long time.
Yeah, so this show takes place in 2030 or something?
Yeah, no, okay, so, yeah, Cornelius Moss is the 44th president of the United States.
The election in the third season is the 2020 election, though.
I guess the US was just founded earlier. Like, George Washington was really on a roll in this universe. He was just, like, putting in the work from, like, the womb.
So, Moss served from 2009 to 2013. So I guess the other president was 2014 to
Wait, where did you get that?
2013.
2009 to 14.
I'm on the fan wiki, looking at
right.
Cornelius Moss's entry.
This fucking shit is falling apart under the slightest scrutiny.
What did you expect? Well-written, planned-out television with this show? It's about as well planned out as a major Hollywood franchise
like I
these
say,
days.
I did more. I did more than this. I mean, it's fucking awful. There's one bit where Aaron Shaw, again, one of the many freakishly good-looking characters, is advising the president, as is his remit, and they blatantly just cut from one take to another of him saying his line in the middle of it. So he's talking, and then while he's still talking, they cut to the president, and mid-sentence, the whole sound of Aaron Shaw talking becomes different. There's a different room ambience to what he's saying. It's did he just record the fucking line onto his phone, as a voice note in the middle of the night, and then email it to the fucking editor? He's like, oh, let's just patch that in, no one's gonna notice.
Yeah, I'd believe it.
Sir, the SEALs have secured the hospital perimeter. They're about to enter the building. We'll be monitoring the visual feeds from Command Ops.
So if the official timeline, it goes George W. Bush had his normal presidency, and then it's Cornelius Moss for 4 years, then Robert Richmond has his whole first term, gets reelected, then gets bombed. Almost immediately.
Okay, right. Is that discernible from the show, or is this just fanfic?
I believe it. I easily will have tuned out a lot of this incredibly boring formality.
I guess because 9/11 did happen in the show.
Yeah, so the Bush years and everything must have happened.
Yeah, and they talk about the war on terror and enhanced interrogation. I just figure that shit could have happened under any American presidency. Probably not to the extent it did under Bush, but, Yeah,
we could mention how, the First Lady character is a whole grab bag of just stock housewife tropes, pretty much.
Yeah, she's a great human rights lawyer and everything, the best in her field. She's just perfect wife. That's pretty much.
Yeah, she exists mostly to humanize her husband, remind him to not be such an asshole. I don't know. And then she flip-flops a few times early on in season 1. She's the one who's insisting that the president's kids should go live away from the White House so they can have a normal life. And then 4 episodes later, she's like, oh, the kids are not going to have a normal life if they can't live with their parents, so they should live with us at the White House. And it's utterly baffling. And both times Kirkman is reluctant, so it's almost like she's just there to disagree with her husband.
Yeah, pretty much. Once they start complicating her character, it feels almost inevitable that she will die. It's just she's been tainted now. She's no longer the perfect first lady, so she's going to have to be a tragic first lady. That's
another way that she
can
be used to humanize the man.
Yeah, totally. My favourite thing is in season 3. What is implied is almost that this is one of the president's taglines, that this is how he self-identifies politically. But in season 3 they start explicitly calling him a sensible centrist.
Yes.
Like Simon Hedges. And there's another hilarious bit where he falls out big time with Cornelius, and he's like, what happened to you? You used to be a compassionate, reasonable, moderate conservative. And obviously watching him say that, I'm just like, you fucking idiot. And to his credit, Cornelius Moss is just also like, you fucking idiot. Do you really think that those people exist? He's like, have you looked outside in the last few years? I moved right when my voters did. It's just so true. That was pretty much one of the few truthful bits in the show, which is just you can try and make these compromises to the right, and they will continually just say, well, fuck you, because that's what their voters want. And unlike politicians on the left and centre, they don't feel that they have to give their voters things they don't want just to force their medicine down.
Yeah. Yeah. And another bit of surprising self-awareness, the very last line of the show had me in stitches, where Kirkman's just talking to his psychologist, and he just says, I realized I was so full of shit, and then cut to black. And I'm like, yeah, you were. So full of shit.
The whole thing, like, what he starts to feel guilty about is, like, the least of his fucking crimes.
Oh, true. Yeah.
Essentially, he pulls this Republican strategist who's, like, kind of like, you know, like, fire-breathing, politi bitch, you know, just like, I don't know what, Malcolm Tucker kind of thing. He brings her
a real operator,
run his campaign, yeah. And this show, you know, they've already established, like, Aaron has to leave the White House and he goes off to work for Kimball Hook Stratton despite being a registered Democrat, and he's like, you know, I feel that with an independent in the White House, party lines matter less than ever. It's like, yeah, go and work for a Republican then, okay, if that's how you justify that. Party lines matter less than ever, so I am working for the leader of the Republican Party. He hires this Republican strategist, and then she, like, starts rat-fucking the Cornelius Moss presidential campaign. She, like, has a mole inside his campaign. And when these two guys on the Moss campaign get sent down for bioterrorism, they've been plotting to sterilize the entire black community or something.
Literally based on melanin.
Yeah. And there's this Israeli spy software that her mole uses, and she's got it on her computer, and Emily, who's Kirkman's chief of staff, accesses that Israeli spy program because fire-breathing political strategist is a boomer, so she keeps her fucking password written down on a piece of paper by a computer. So Emily gets on, like, top-secret Israeli spy software, and she finds that there's these, like, 6 or so voice recordings, and she clicks one of them, and it's, like, Cornelius Moss, like, why did you do this terrible, racially motivated bioterrorism campaign completely behind my back, without my knowledge, which, by the way, I had no idea about? And it's like, and she just listens to this one, and she's like, my god, and doesn't click any of the other 5, which could be all like, who knows, like, thank god I said that thing about not knowing anything about the bioterrorism next to that tactically placed microphone. So she, like, literally just clicks this one file, and she listens to a couple of bits, and it could be, like, totally out of context, it could be, like, staged. It's literally, it's like a 30-second long clip, and they consider this total vindication for this man who at the very least had employed 2 genocidal racist terrorists to run, not just work
at least
on, run
it
his
impugns
campaign.
His judgment a little.
Yeah. And Cuckman's so fucking sad, like, oh, poor Cornelius, I've betrayed him. And in the end, Emily calls the FBI on fire-breathing political consultant woman. And I was just like, you know what? Who cares? Arrest Tom Kirkman as well for his crimes. If we're going to start arresting people, because Cornelius Moss is a total piece of shit. I mean, the guy playing him is pretty good, with, like, that avuncular, old right-wing American man kind of thing.
Yeah. Did Israel ever come up?
Israel barely came up, I don't know. They were shook about a designated survivor anti-Semitism scandal. Yeah, no, that's weird, actually. Israel barely comes up, even as, like, one of the good countries. Yeah,
it was kind of conspicuous to me. I wonder if they were just like, that's too controversial. Let's not go near that subject.
Yeah.
I'd be surprised, yeah.
I've got a profound quote from Tom Kirkman here. Despite recent changes to the global order, this is not the time to retreat into isolationism or populism. It's just like reading an interview of Eddie Marsan, where he's just like, these are the fancy words, what I picked up from The Guardian, the fast-changing, globalized economy, got to adapt to it.
I'm very sorry that you lost your job, sir. But as to what I can do to help bring it back, the answer is nothing. It's gone, for good. And if some politician told you otherwise, they were lying to you. And I won't do that.
Now, the reason why jobs like yours have disappeared isn't just because of cheaper labor in some other country. Primarily, it's technology.
Take a shot every time they mention bipartisanship or unity or consensus.
Well, that's what I was going to get to. Like, so I mentioned the thing where he's like, what happened to you, Cornelius? You used to be a compassionate conservative. And he's like, you fucking idiot. I always hated the poor and minorities. My fucking favourite recurring trope in Designated Survivor is when there'll be some, like, grave issue of national security, like Turkey and Russia have conspired to bomb the air bases or something. They're going to give the air bases to Cuba. He'll say, you know, I think I need to bring the leadership of the House in on this as a courtesy. And his aides will be like, I don't know, Mr. President, they're just going to try and politicize it. And he's like, no, they wouldn't. These are good people, these are public servants, and this is an issue of the national interest. They would not play politics with something as grave as our national security. And then every single time, the politicians are all out for themselves. None of them are as pure and good
And
as
every
Tom
single
Kirkman.
time the Kirkman faction is completely baffled that politicians would make politics about politics.
Yeah, he's always like just deeply shocked and upset, and it completely fucks up whatever plan he's like painstakingly drawn out. He's like, this is the one thing we didn't expect to happen. And it's always just like he talks to Republicans and he's like, look, I'm just gonna need you not to say anything racist for the next 2 hours. And they're like, oh, sure thing, Mr. President, I won't say a racist thing. And then they get out. As soon as they step out of the office, they're just like, listen here, I got a few words beginning with N. Other things to tell you, Mr. Journalist. That happens so much, which is that he'll just try and brook some kind of bipartisan compromise, and they'll just throw it back in his face. And what the show is trying to say is that why can't everyone be as good as him? Why can't everyone be the grown-up in the room like he is, and this mature person who is gonna reach across the aisle, bipartisan marketplace?
If these politicians would just stop
ideas.
playing party politics,
Yeah.
we'd get so much more bullshit done.
Yeah, well, he basically does destroy the US two-party system. He does it like...
Yeah.
I think also
They somehow elect 150 independent Congress people. That's totally possible.
Yeah, so the Democrats and Republicans, they just turn into these little rumps.
And he keeps on getting betrayed by people he chooses for his vice president.
Oh, yeah, they all... So he hires, like... First of all, it's the guy who's literally part of the terrorist plot, who gets killed by his own also terrorist wife. Then who is it next?
Well, for ages, he doesn't have a VP, and I kept on wondering, are they just not talking about it? Because they don't mention it at all.
He's
really
just like,
conspicuous.
I've been burned, you know, I don't want to put my heart on the line again. I've been hurt too many times. Yeah, then he decides to pick that progressive black woman, because he's like, oh, she's real, she's about the issues, not just about becoming president herself. And then, like, 2 episodes later, she's like, sorry, Mr. President, but A, I'm going to lead this no confidence proceeding you for being upset about your wife's death, and secondly, I also want to become president myself. I'm
running against you,
Yeah, he makes Cornelius
Secretary of State?
Yeah, he makes him his Secretary of State. The guy is, like, obviously a big hawk, as you can imagine. And then when it comes time to the presidential election, both the Democrats and Republicans invite him to be their candidate. The Republicans have this great thing. Firstly, you see the Democrats saying, you're progressive on pretty much every social issue in the book. And then the Republicans meet him, they're like, strong on foreign policy, fiscally conservative. I'm just like, how is he progressive on social issues if he's fiscally conservative? But there is this, I wish I'd have made a note of it, but there's this thing where they're listing, like, the important issues, and he's like, listen, we've got to get the economy, education, defense, the economy back on track. He basically says the deficit twice. So he's like, we need to improve education and equalities and the deficit and balancing the books. It's like, yeah, those are synonymous, Mr. President.
Yeah.
And he's supposed to be an academic as well. He's not a very good one. Like, you wouldn't be a good academic if you believe all this stupid centrist bullshit. Like, you're just an idiot. You're just like, oh, yeah, everyone works together in the national interest. I'm like, sorry, why would a university employ someone? I know they do, but, like, foolish.
Yeah.
I wasn't joking earlier when I mentioned that he pulls out the trump card when he's talking to the Ukrainian and Russian ambassador. They start conversing in Russian, and he's just like, fuck you guys, I speak Russian too. Just absolutely rinses them by speaking fluent Russian.
We should all proceed with caution. There's a Russian proverb, хороший друг, осторожный друг. A cautious friend is a good friend.
I prefer. Gornye slova, Adila. My wife's family is Russian. Her grandparents didn't want her dating a poor academic, so I learned their language in an effort to win them over. Because I'm thorough. If a single person is hurt on that plane, let me explain how thorough I will be. I will wake up every morning determined to punish those who are responsible. And when your bosses start calling, trying to figure out why we've severed diplomatic relations, and the sanctions just keep mounting, 2 names will be used in my explanation. Sobonyatna. Sobonyatna. That'll be all.
What did you tell them?
Playtime is over.
Out of the blue. Like, I'm sure he'd never said anything about speaking Russian before that.
Yeah, it's never mentioned. It's just like, oh, you know what? I did.
He also, actually, in that scene where he speaks to them in Russian, he takes a break and then in English explains why he knows Russian for a few sentences.
Yeah, he's
like nobody asked.
Yeah, like, I can see you're extremely impressed. Well, as it happens, I was in the KGB youth wing for a few years in the late 80s. My father was a visiting spy for the CIA, and it was then that I met a young Vladimir Putin, and we have been fast friends ever since.
Did we mention that there was 3 entirely different writing teams, pretty much?
Yeah, that's so funny. It's created by some guy who was obviously just like, I have no attachment to this project whatsoever. I do not care as long as I get my exec producer credit. And then they hired a head writer, and then she quit before they'd really made the show. And then midway through the first season, the showrunner quit and they got a new one. And then the second season has none of the same writers, and then nor does the third season as either of the previous 2 seasons.
Which makes sense because it changes tone and style almost completely over and over and over again.
Yeah, I mean, it has some...
And so few of the episodes have any connection to each other. There are some threads, but the big foreign policy thing almost never comes up from each episode, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very tired. I had something else to say, but I'm just gonna say instead that Kiefer Sutherland looks a lot better in season 1 than he does by season 3. It's like he's actually been president for 3 years, the level of deterioration. It's like, have you seen Keir Starmer recently? I don't know if he's...
Someone quite rightly said on the old Twitter that he kind of looks like what you'd expect someone to look like if they hang out with the right-wing ghouls of the Labour Party for too long.
Yeah, exactly. Just drain all the blood from your face, or fill it I'm too tired. I can't structure jokes. I start thinking of the components and they don't come together.
So your sleeping schedule being all fucked up?
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. We're not going to be the first leftist podcast to cover it, but none of ones that are particularly famous have done it, I don't think. There was one, I forget the name, but they did 2 episodes called Designated Cuck, but It wasn't my kind of thing, because it was the sort of thing where they just say an online meme and everyone laughs, and I don't really like that. Because I hate
most podcasts.
I hate the internet, and I don't find memes funny, and
We make our own memes.
I've only
That's
ever
the difference.
used memes to further my own agenda in a purely cynical way. Yeah, a bit about the FBI threatening the jihadist family. He's like, we're gonna fucking snatch your elderly mother from her Dubai home and deport her to Pakistan, where she'll probably die. That was definitely one of the things where I was like, this is an evil show. Like, this is the quote-unquote good guys who are saying this. All the governors are complete fascists. They, at one point, propose a nationwide ban on immigration. Going a little bit further than Trump's Muslim ban. They're just like, let's ban all immigration.
Great ideas.
Here is a classic Kirkman compromise, which is that there's this plane full of immigrants that's grounded in Florida, and like I say, all the governors of every state are fascists. In Florida it happens to be a Latino fascist, but nonetheless these refugees from somewhere, possibly a real or possibly a made up country, I don't know.
Oh, it's another case, sorry to interrupt, it's another case of where it gets mentioned offhandedly at the very beginning of the episode, and you just know it's going to become a central issue.
Yeah. So the governor is like, you get off that plane, I will fucking kill all of you. We're going to secede like Michigan, blah, 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 blah. Eventually the president compromises by, he deports the immigrants, but only to Canada. So they go and live in Canada instead. That was a classic Kirkman compromise.
Pick up our slack, Canada.
Yeah, exactly. Like, oh, hey, they're decent human beings up there. Well, compared to us, anyway. So they're like interrogating this guy, Hannah Wells, and whoever else is fucking the FBI. And so they're like, yeah, we're gonna deport your mother and fucking Pakistan. You're gonna hang her. I don't know why she was gonna die, but they heavily suggested she was going to die, possibly the trauma.
Maybe she's sick or something.
Yeah, that was probably it. Anyway, so they threaten his family, and they're like, so why'd you do it, eh? What possible reason could you have to dislike the United States? And it's almost like in MacGruber, where Lieutenant Dixon Piper asks MacGruber, so MacGruber, why does Kuntz hate you so much anyway? And MacGruber's like, oh man, I have no idea. I mean, I just stole his girlfriend and then made her get an abortion with his baby, so we could get a new start.
Why did he do it? Why did Kuntz kill your wife?
To this day, I have no idea. We actually all went to college together. Believe it or not, we were very close friends. After graduation, he got engaged to her. He asked me to be his best man. And right about that time, I started banging her and mowing her box. She was actually the first person I felt comfortable enough around to let eat out my butt. Anyway, shortly thereafter, she left him for me. She was actually carrying his child at the time. I asked her to terminate it, obviously, so we could start fresh. And she agreed. We were so in love. And he took that from me.
It's really fucked up.
It's just like that, basically. So they're like, what turned you against the United States? What gave you this sick delusion that led you to hate us? And he's just like, oh, I don't know, really, I guess, apart from the drone strike that killed my family and 100 other civilians. But then, again, it's just like the thing where they had to reveal that the foreigner wasn't too good after all, or that the US didn't really mean to bomb the hospital. It was just that the foreigners had covered up the hospital so that the US didn't know it was a hospital. It turns out that this guy who's all sad because the US killed his family in a drone strike actually has a secret second family. So look, it's not America's fault. This guy, he doesn't live up to. I mean, possibly, maybe he's from a country where you can actually have multiple wives, and so it's not even like breaking the law or anything. He's just doing a perfectly normal thing for his culture. But it's just the US, just like, look, he's bad. Honestly, he doesn't respect the sanctity of marriage. I mean, yeah, sure, it sounds like his previous wife got killed in a drone strike, but how dare he remarry? How dare this motherfucker? Again, just like classic designated survivor manipulation, being like, oh yeah, he's got a second.
Designated survivor manipulation.
Oh no, the guy's got a second family. It's cool that we killed his first family in a drone strike.
There's 50 episodes of this stuff, Tom. 50. Over 50.
Yeah, I keep like being like, oh, we've covered all the major diplomatic crises now, and we never fucking have.
Thank you for showing me why I should never ever watch this show. Thank you.
Yeah.
We did it so you didn't have to.
Yeah, man.
You took the bullet for me. I appreciate it.
You're more than welcome. There's a... Sorry, I'm so tired.
That's alright.
Oh yeah, he was going to do a drone strike at one point, and then, because he's pro-war, but he's careful when it comes to war, firstly, they were like, no civilians will be killed in the airstrike. And he's like, oh, that's fine. I think this is the one where they destroy the hospital. yeah, this is the one where they destroy the hospital. But yeah, initially they abort the mission because the terrorist's not there. And I'm like, are we sure that he hadn't had his secret second wife die before this that had made him anti-war? Because I think a real American president would have done the strike even if the terrorist wasn't actually there.
Before we do anything, the FBI is absolutely certain that Al-Sakar was behind the attack.
75%, sir.
75%?
That's as high as it gets when it comes to a call like this.
75 is still a C on a test, General.
This is not a test, this is war.
All the more reason to get it right, don't you think?
Sir, I know we got off on the wrong foot. You did a fine job staving off the Iranians last night. But I am advising you that the country is on the brink and talk will not work here. America is demanding action and I am giving you an enemy we can kill.
You think I don't want to strike back against the people who did this? I want to find every single person involved in this attack, from planning to execution, and rip them limb from limb, which is why I need to know exactly who did this. Come back to me with more than 75%, and I'll launch the damn missiles myself. How much more? 25, damn it!
Completely. You just reminded me of, speaking of drone strikes, because they do come up. At the end of season 1, when they found Lloyd, the guy behind the bombing, in his bunker, and he's got sarin gas, which he's threatening to use on Washington, D.C. They call in a UAV to do a drone strike, and suddenly the leaders of the Senate come and issue an order through the courts to stop, because you can't use the military against U.S. citizens. That's illegal.
Try telling the people of Waco that.
Well, wasn't that the FBI?
Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, sorry.
Honestly, you kind of spoiled
Did
the
the
whole
National
thing
Guard
there.
count?
I think the National Guard's fine. You're just not allowed to use the main armed forces. And they're holding a night court session to hammer out this issue.
Man, that's some real Keir Starmer shit right there. Just like, oh, you smashed a shop window during the London riots, did you? Well, don't worry, I am going to stay up all night to give you your 10-year sentence.
Exactly, working overtime. In this case, we're supposed to be rooting against the people who are arguing that we should use the military against citizens. And ultimately, the president comes to this compromise, beautiful Kirkman compromise, where he'll get the FBI to order the drone strike. And then it's not the military anymore. Boom, problem solved. And then the senators are like, wow, President, that is genius. Even though we were trying to stop you, we think what you did was a great compromise. So wonderful.
Well, the funniest fucking thing is that when he gets his therapy and realizes war's good again and invades Cuba, his aides literally turn to each other and say, firstly, he made the difficult decision, but the right decision.
He made the hard decision, but the right one.
And the other says, the president's back.
Yes.
I think the president's back.
Once that bit of blood is spilt, well, they smell blood, they're just like, yes, kill the foreigners.
Yeah, when he has his Liam Neeson moment, the president literally says, "If you do something that I don't like, I will find you and I will kill you."
Yeah. I will personally kill every last one. I will rip their throats out myself. Yeah, he likes that kind of posturing quite a lot. Oh, and just like finally the annoying faced son is up on there at the moment, and at the start of it he's just like, oh yeah, I'm just going round to friends to program a dubstep track or something, and he's obviously lying because he's going off to like try and sell some E's.
He's a drug dealer, which comes up exactly once and then never comes up again after he explains sometimes people just do things.
Yeah, exactly. And then they're just like, well, I guess that's his beliefs and I respect that. And the press don't seem to work it out. Like, no one's bought a bit of gear off him and is like, oh shit, well, that guy, hang on, I recognise that kid on TV. I bought a fucking bag off him. I think, anyway, it's good to return to something that's very much in favour of American liberal interventionism.
There's not enough media like that.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's the ones that advocate kind of conservative interventionism, your American snipers and so on. But yeah, I feel like we rang in last year with a highly interventionist film as well, Michael Bay's 3-6 Mafia, and I'm very pleased that we've been able to return to that warmongering territory and, in the words of Eddie Marsan, promote some democracy in other countries. Fellas, it's been real.
It's just unfortunate or fortunate, however you look at it, that this show's been cancelled. Twice now.
Been cancelled, man. Another victim of cancel culture. That's like a kind of line they'd have in season 3 when they're trying to be relevant.
Yeah.
Like, if they'd have done it just like 2 years later, then there would have
Let's
been
Netflix and chill. They throw that reference in there.
Well, they'd used up their cunt quotient for that episode. Not in terms of character. Plenty of cunts in the show, but yeah. Right, it's Jack after the fact here, just trying to get all our eggs in one basket. So a couple of stray thoughts on Designated Survivor that I keep forgetting the name of the show, but I didn't get round to mentioning in this episode. So firstly, in the same vein as Tom Kirkman just fucking owning those stupid Russians and Ukrainians by speaking Russian to them, there's this one episode where this scathing satirist, I mean, realistically, this guy probably writes some, like, John Crace without the heroin type shitty little political sketch for the New Yorker or something. But, this biting anti-establishment satirist, he says he thinks the establishment is cancer, has won, as part of an award, meeting with Tom Kirkman, and Kirkman's aides are just so worried about this. They're like, oh, he's going to maul the president. But anyway, the president eventually meets him. His aides can't put it off forever. The president just completely bowls the guy over by just being like, I'm your biggest fan. Keep laying into me. It keeps me honest. This anti-establishment searing satirist is just fucking speechless, like, oh my god, Mr. President, thank you. I don't know what to say. This honor is beyond me. The show again positing that we all deep down know that essentially a conservative view of the world is a right one. And secondly, there's a domestic crisis pretty early on, which is that it's speculated that essentially the president might be a cuck. Well, it turns out that actually his wife was with this shady white-collar criminal before she married him. But nonetheless, there's lots of speculation that his son may not actually be his son. And as is the way in Designated Survivor, that leads to a lot of kind of like, oh, is the president a real man, blah, 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 or is he a cuck? Well, yes, he is a cuck, but only politically.
Well, yeah, it's been great.
Well,
great tearing it apart.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been real fun, and we'll have to record something else again soon. Tom, it's been very real to have you on here, man. It's been far out and good.
Thank you for being a UN observer to our elections activity.
Our diplomatic crisis.
Everything I surveyed here was above order.
Oh, thank you, sir. The UN weapons inspector has confirmed we do have WMD, and it is our fire takes. Right, I'm going to get a zoot rolled and watch some counter-terrorism.
Sounds like a plan.
Form of Hotline.
Nice.
I'm going to watch my own feed of my jihadists I keep in my basement. I'm going to attach electrodes to their nipples. I'm going to waterboard them. I'm going to play heavy metal at jarring intervals. And I'm going to plunge a knife directly into their hands like that guy in the one episode of Homeland. All the legal and above board interrogation.
Great. Didn't ask you guys, how was your Christmases and stuff? Was it all good?
All good, man. All good.
Quiet. It was alright, though.
I'm sorry, I'm absolutely desperate for a pee.
Okay.
I've gotta...
Well, it's been good.
If you guys want to talk, then, don't.
It's been good, Tom. Been good, Jack. Yeah.
We'll have a chilled out chat soon, guys. As we did it.
Yeah,
Take
definitely.
Peace.
Love. Peace and love.